Hello, welcome to Enlightning. So glad you're here today, folks in the chats. So glad you're here today. Alexander, thank you so much for sharing your time and expertise with us. Today, we're going to learn about Keycloak. We're doing a series on access management tools in the CNCF, and we've already covered DEX and Hexa. And Alexander's going to teach us about Keycloak today. Alexander, will you tell us about yourself, please?
Hi, yeah, great to be here. So I'm Alexander, or Alex for short. I'm here in Germany, near Frankfurt Main. Yeah, and I've been a Keycloak, working at Keycloak full-time for the last 2 years now. Before that, I've been working as an IT consultant, where I also used Keycloak for several years. So once there was a free spot on the team, I grabbed the opportunity. And I'm also now a maintainer, which is great. So also shaping how Keycloak evolves over time.
That's super cool. I want to say a quick hello to Code with Sean. Hi, Code with Sean. And Farico's here too from Argentina. Hello. One thing, so I am always approaching different projects, and usually I put messages up in their Slack channel in the CNCF workspace. And one thing that struck me when I was trying to find a Keycloak guest, there are a lot of y'all. There's a big passion for Keycloak out there. Tell me about the Keycloak community.
Yeah, the Keycloak community is, I'd say, it's mostly developers who need an identity and access management or just single sign-on in their projects, and they just start using it. It's simple to start with. And so we have a users mailing list, a developer mailing list for those who want to contribute to Keycloak. And then there's a discourse forum, there are the Slack channels at the CNCF. So there are a lot of places where you can meet people. And Keycloak has been around for quite some time, for 10 years by now. And so that's gave us some time to grow the community.
10 years that's a mature project. There are not many projects who come onto my show, at least, who've been around for 10 years. That's super cool. So one thing that's happening today that's never happened before is we're going to try out doing a giveaway. We're going to do a book giveaway. So I'm going to put in the chat a link to this book. And will you tell us about the book we're giving away today and what the process is?
Yeah, so this is, the first edition of the book, but now starting in September, there's a second edition of the book. It's the Keycloak Identity and Access Management for Modern Applications. It's been written by our project lead, Stian Torgersen, and also Pedro Igor Silva, who's also a maintainer of Keycloak. And it's now the second edition, all updated with the latest changes we did. For example, moving to Quarkus, which I might talk about that later. And it's all updated since last year, since September, I think we published it. And Puck Publishing agreed to give away one copy today. And the process is we'll be asking a question at the end of the live stream. And the person who answered this question will get the book. That's going to be the procedure.
Excellent. So we're going to talk about Keycloak. And then at the end of the stream, we're going to ask a Keycloak question. And whoever answers it first, let's say correctly.
Oh, yeah. That's really cool.
We're all technical here. We split hairs around this sort of thing. Whoever answers it first and correctly will get the book. That's so cool. I'm really excited to be a part of that. So one thing I want to hear from y'all chat, first of all, if you just want to say hi and where you're from, I absolutely love that we can just hang out globally, have a global hangout together. So please do that much. And if you want to, tell us like what your role is at your company, because one thing that Alex told me he's going to talk about today is the way different roles can use Keycloak, different personas can use Keycloak. So let us know, like, what's your role at your company and what are you currently doing for access management for IAM? Hello, Vig's Codes. Thanks for being here. So I think with that, I'm going to start moseying on behind the light board. One thing I'd like to hear about from you while I do that is I understand there are some security-related conferences that are worth mentioning, and you personally are giving some talks coming up.
Yeah, that's totally correct. So the next upcoming conference where we have some live presentations of Keycloak and also around identity and access management solutions. That's going to be FOSDEM in Belgium. FOSDEM is, I think, one of the largest open source developer conferences with thousands of people attending. And there are developer rooms. And there's an identity and access management developer room happening there. Think of it as I say, one full day single track conference with half an hour for each talk. So we'll get lots of content and coverage of the identity and access management space. I think it's going to be a great thing. At least 2 talks will be covering Keycloak. Other talks will cover other products and use cases. So, and FOSDEM will be both on site in Brussels, and it will also be online. So
nice.
you'll be able to follow the stream, ask questions in the stream, and if you don't manage to be on the stream or live at FOSDEM, there are going to be recordings available usually a week after, so you can watch them, and it's all in English, so it's basically the same as here. So that might be worth noting. And the second thing, it would be on February 22nd, there's a Keycloak Developer Day happening. So this is an all-day conference covering Keycloak only, and you will have also some maintainers there, including me. Another maintainer would be Thomas Darimont, who would also be there, and the organizers are also very into Keycloak, and we will have talks, we will have an unconference, we have a workshop with the maintainers, everything you ever wanted to ask a maintainer and not dare to do in public or in a public chat like this. So we're really looking forward. This is like the FOSDEM has been around for years, I believe, but this Keycloak Developer Day is happening for the first time, and we're very curious how this ends, how many people come around. We're not sure yet if we want to record everything there. We might not have the possibilities to record every room, but maybe some of the rooms will be recorded. So yeah, and this Keycloak, well, FOSDEM is actually free, but well, you have to get there. But if you ever wanted to visit Brussels, I hear there's a lot of people sometimes only go there for the beer, or the Belgian waffles.
Yes.
Yeah.
We have some chatter in the comments. I want to restate, as we have people join, that we're doing a book giveaway today. So we're going to ask a question about Keycloak at the end of the episode, and whoever answers first and correctly will get a book about Keycloak. So, and then I want to say hello. VixCode says they're a staff software engineer building on-prem CI/CD system tailored for game studios.
Ooh,
How
wow.
cool is that? Yeah. And hello to Martin from Austria. I still have a couple of things to turn on, so I'll be right back. Well, we chat, but let's. And we have one. We have Aleski asking if there are no kangaroos in Austria. What about koalas and dingoes? Dingoes. So, what's your particular talk about, Alex?
At the conference or just here now? Sorry.
At the conference, yes.
Oh yeah.
Austin,
so at the at the Keycloak Developer Days, I'll give a Keycloak keynote, basically targeting developers, telling what's like the latest stuff and how to work with Keycloak, how you can contribute, because as an open source project, we are looking for new contributions all the time, basically. We still need to figure out how to review all these contributions, so we might also be interested in how to do that in a more efficient way.
Excellent, yeah.
Let's see if we want to have maybe we don't have any office hours yet as a project, like having like every week or every 4 weeks, like an hour where we are online and talk live to people. But we might do something similar during 2024. That's something that's on my list.
That's a good New Year's resolution, yeah.
Yeah. And for the FOSDEM conference, I'm going to be talking about declarative user profiles. So the cool thing, well, I would show it live eventually there, but imagine like you can change how Keycloak handles all the information of a user without programming, just having a form and saying these are the fields that my users should fill out, are maybe mandatory fields when they register, and all this can be configured using a web page without programming. This is, I think, a big game changer, especially when you're changing, when you integrate them with other systems, and each organization asks different questions, like what details, maybe what department are people in. Some want to have phone numbers, some don't. Basically, all of them want to have your email address, that's for sure. But some also want to have an address. And this is all going to be dynamic, and this helps a lot to customize it to basically all scenarios that you can think of. Well, broadly speaking.
Super cool. We have another comment. We have Tony Wu's here from Seattle, Washington. They're a DevOps manager, and they've been using Keycloak for maybe about 2 years. So they like how customizable it is, which is kind of what you're just talking about.
Yeah, that's right. Cool. And then, as you've been working with it for probably 2 years, and you're probably already on the Quarkus distribution, that's a lot simpler to install than the previous Wildfire-based distribution of Keycloak. That's one of the biggest changes we had over the last, I think, 2-3 years.
So those of you who don't know me, I'm pretty new to tech. I actually just wrote my first line of code in 2019 and January 2019, and I got my first job as a cloud developer in November of 2019. So one thing that I love to start these episodes with is like context. So can you tell me what the world was like 10 years ago before Keycloak that caused Keycloak to get created?
Yeah, 10 years ago, there was some of these ancient protocols like SAML existed. OpenID Connect was very, very new at that time.
Okay.
And yeah, that was a time where you had like lots of applications, more applications coming up, and you needed to put in your username and password in each of these applications, which was annoying, error prone. You need to memorize your passwords. That's very, very annoying. And with OpenID Connect being a much simpler protocol to implement than, for example, SAML, well, you needed to have some system who was doing, well, maybe the single sign-on for you, but also maybe a lot more what's identity and access management, what we'll talk about in a second. But then if you move to single sign-on, you want to have a database of users, want to have a form where people log in, and all this was then provided by Keycloak. You have one archive you download, you unzip, you start it up, and you can connect all your applications using either SAML or OpenID Connect to this one application that's going to Keycloak. And then you have only one password, and you only have one. Well, maybe you log in only once in the morning with your username and password, and you log in for the rest of the day. And whenever you open a new application, you still have a cookie from Keycloak, and you're still logged in. And this is what single sign-on is about.
So Keycloak is behind the single sign-on experience that you get when you access like a suite of tools within the organization you work for.
Yeah, that's right. And then every organization maybe wants to have something different in how this single sign-on works. So they want to have maybe a customized login page. They want to have customizable backends. They want to have extension points where you can put in their custom logic. They want to connect legacy applications to it. They want to maybe have an existing SAML in the backend, but then want to talk OpenID Connect to their applications. So that was the time back 10 years ago. Nowadays, I think most applications, talk already OpenID Connect, and back in the time it was maybe not so common, but now it is quite common. And then I'd say, I would love to say it just works, but then sometimes with OpenID Connect you have to configure. It's all about tokens. Maybe I'll talk about this a bit more later. But then you want to be very specific, which application gets what information and what kind of token, who is then allowed to access this application. So It's always down to details when it comes to security. And the good news is all these details, you can solve them or get to these details with Keycloak.
So do you feel like I've captured it adequately here? Like one problem was like from a user experience, every app needs a unique username and password.
Yeah.
Everyone has their notepad off to the side, some handwritten thing. And then there are lots of different protocols too.
Yeah, well, OpenID Connect was pretty new, and we were looking for the single sign-on service. But now it's now established, everybody's talking it, and I think Keycloak picked the right protocols there, both supporting SAML and OpenID Connect. And over time, OpenID Connect evolved quite a bit. So actually, to do good OpenID Connect, let's say, maybe it's a good word here. Maybe to do good OpenID Connect, you need to really have a good test suite. You need to make it configurable. You need to really have a compliance test suite. We have a OpenID Connect working group at Keycloak who really tracks the latest developments around it at OpenID Connect, and and also what's coming up there. It's an evolving standard. Sometimes a bit surprising what they come up with, but that's what they do.
That's a whole can of worms. We have a couple of comments. Oh, yeah.
The thing is, maybe when you're when you do online banking, at least in Germany, all the banks give you some custom token generator, an application you put on your phones, and when you are with multiple banks, you have multiple applications on your phone. And even for the last 10 years, people have been using OpenID Connect only outside of banks, but not with banks. But this is now changing. There's like financial grade OpenID Connect with some standards around it and best practices built into it. And now banks are starting to use it as well. So that's, I think, maybe the blessing for OpenID Connect. And also that Keycloak is showing that we can support it in a way that banks use Keycloak to authenticate their customers to wire money all over the world, which is really cool.
So, in my very limited noob experience, my understanding is single sign-on. I guess single sign-on is like how once you're in an organization, how you can access all the apps that organization offers with an easy experience. And OpenID Connect, I associate more with like as a user on the internet. Now all the apps in the freaking universe that use OpenID Connect, now I can log in with my Google, like with one single password to all of it.
Oh yeah, so maybe put it apart a bit. So I'd say the single sign-on is you log in with Keycloak by providing some kind of credentials. We can go into more details. And then you basically have I'd say, usually a cookie and a session with Keycloak. And whenever an application wants to know who you are, it will redirect to Keycloak. And then there's a redirect from Keycloak back to the application with a code that then the application can use to exchange it against the token and then find out who you are. So that's authentication. And then OpenID Connect describes the communication between the application and Keycloak, basically. This standard protocol back and forth redirects either in your browser or on the back. So this is OpenID Connect. The single sign-on is, I say, the cookie with Keycloak. And the other term we also had here today was Identity and Access Management Solution. So Identity and Access Management Solution is, well, it's about managing your users. And this is, it starts with a login screen that you put in your username and password. But then Identity and Access Management is so much more. It's that you register the user for the first time. So with Keycloak, it's a click of a button that you can configure a realm or Keycloak to have a link on the login screen saying, I want to register. And it's just a toggle that you can switch on and off. Like some companies want to self-register the users, some don't. So it's a toggle that you can switch. So you can register a user for the first time. You have you forgot your password, and Keycloak will have all the functionality to send you an email with a link that you can set a new password. So it's all about password recovery. if you want to have a second factor, so you have these time-based tokens, OTPs. So then you can, you as a user log into Keycloak, go to the account console, say I want to have this multi-factor authentication and set it up. You can also set up WebAuthn, so that you have your security key that you plug into your FIDO key, for example. You plug into your computer, press the button, and you don't need to remember a password. So it's also about an administrator can assign you roles and groups. All that is, for me, part of identity and access management. So it's about who the user is, how the user authenticates, what roles, what groups, what permissions they have. And once you're done with users, it's the same for your applications, or clients as we call them. So you register maybe your Grafana in your company to be a registered client in Keycloak, so it can authenticate the users there. So that's all what identity and access management is about. So it's, I'd say, mostly managing users and clients there, with an admin UI, with the REST interface, you name it.
Okay, this is very helpful context. Manages both users and clients. I want to say hi to some chat folks. Hector, I love that Hector responded to our question, which is, what is your role in your organization right now? Hector says they've been using Keycloak for some years. Something they like is several interfaces offered to developers, such as Client API, Admin CLI, REST API, and a GUI. That's great. Keycloak seems very developer focused.
Yeah, and that's a very good summary of all the interfaces you have. And I'd say, hopefully, if we've done it right, and in most cases I think we did, they behave all the same. You can manage the same data using all the interfaces. For example, maybe you start out with the web UI in your browser and configure things, but this gets tedious quite fast. You don't, as a developer, you want to automate all the things.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
then you soon start using the command line interface to configure the same stuff.
Cool. And then Cormaj is here. Cormaj comes almost every stream. Thanks for coming, friend. So to recap what you said, identity and access management is a whole solution. It encompasses a lot. And so it registers users for the first time, and then it controls how a user authenticates. You do password recovery. There's multi-factor authentication. Administrators can assign roles. But basically, you have to think about how it's managing users and the whole user experience, but it's also managing how to integrate with all the different clients and authenticate to all of those. And we're talking about both authentication and authorization, right?
Yes, you can also do fine-grained authorization there. I think you can do that with Keycloak. It's still a preview feature, if I'm not mistaken, but we're working on to make it also fully supported. Some people are then, well, for example, at the Keycloak Developer Day, we will have a talk how to integrate Open Policy Agent with Keycloak so that you...
Uh-oh.
All right, you're back.
Oh, I think you froze. One of us froze.
Okay.
So you were saying about Open Policy Agent, about OPO. Is what
for Open Policy Agent is something that you can use for authorization, for more fine-grained things. So Keycloak has something built in for authorizations, but if that's not enough, or if you want to extend it, you can. There are talks how to integrate authorizations with OPA, so that you, I don't know, that your applications then use the token they get from Keycloak and send it to OPA directly, or they send it to Keycloak and Keycloak then talks to OPA and does the authorizations. Also that maybe I make a side note about talking about login flows. I think that's one of the most configurable and sometimes mind-blowing stuff that you can do with Keycloak.
That's cool. Oh, this is exciting. I guess I'll put that on this list too. It's getting long. So what we're doing, I'm login flows. I'm I'm trying to capture like identity and access management, generally speaking, but the way I think I'm also capturing some of the benefits or features of Keycloak at the same time. Am I not?
Yeah, you are definitely.
Okay, I had a feeling.
Only the ones we
Let's
support are on this list, but it's good.
let's get a nice. I want to say hi to Bidu. Bidu's here. Thanks for coming, friend. I'm glad you're here. I want to get onto the board like a definition of Keycloak. Like Keycloak is.
Keycloak is an open source identity and access management solution, but I might go as far as saying Keycloak is the open source identity and access management solution. Well, some others might disagree, but let's put it in is there.
Bold. So
it's the open source identity and access management solution. Let's put open source in there if it's still if you still have a chance. So I think there's a lot of commercial vendors around, and there's also some very leading vendors who have lots of people working on it. But then at some point they offer it as a service, and then they're free to change the pricing as they like. And I think in the past people might have been surprised by that a bit. So every time they raise their prices, I think we get more inquiries on our mailing list.
Okay, so Keycloak is a single open source solution that handles all of these different things that we discussed.
Yeah.
Excellent. This is wonderful. So I just want to underscore how much nothing I know. I just learned the difference, and during 2 streams ago during DEX, the guest taught me the difference between authentication and authorization. So I'm along with the ride for you, but this is making a lot of sense. So not only do we have differences between authorization and authentication, but also thinking about differences of like this solution is intended for processes when this solution is intended more for human interaction. And then there's also like this is more company, like private network facing, or this is more internet facing. These are the different groups that I'm coming up with as I'm learning.
Yeah. So I say, well, starting at the beginning, I think Keycloak is very strong when it comes to authentication, maybe not that strong when it comes to authorization at the moment, but we're working on that. When it comes to public or private, so I know that it can do both. People are using it to authenticate public-facing users like banks, for example, but they're also using it for their employees. Maybe a lot of people are using it only internally in the enterprise, and for that it's quite good to, well, yeah. So for example, I think I covered what users can do with that quite good. So I think we have all this how you can authenticate. We covered that quite a bit. So maybe let's talk about how an administrator would then install it in a setup, right? Would that make sense now, or would you have more questions?
Well, we do have some questions in the chat, so I'd like to get to those. I think talking about an administrator is great, and then you also I'm on your login flow. You really talked about how exciting that is, so I'm on the edge of my seat as far as that goes too. But let's say we have Omari's here. Really enjoyed the DEX talk, so you're back again. Thank you. That's awesome. The one question for you from Koromaju, can you give a best use case so far that you've seen using Keycloak? That's a big question.
Yeah, so I've seen so many. So in some companies, I think when you would use it for your company users, I think one of the most often use cases I've seen is you're already have an LDAP somewhere, maybe an Active Directory or something else, where you log in anywhere to your machines, maybe Windows machines, maybe other machines. And then Keycloak is great to connect all your applications that know OpenID Connect to Keycloak, and Keycloak connects to LDAP. And then and it also provides a UI where people can then even change their LDAP password using the Keycloak interface, which is quite nice. So that's maybe the most entry-level enterprise use case I've seen, though putting it in front of your LDAP. When it comes to public-facing, I don't know. Sometimes people just figure out the user management is not as flexible as they want it to be. For example, when they want to secure maybe a Grafana, maybe something else, who then should have access to that. And sometimes you have 2 or 3 applications and it's about this single sign-on experience. Again, that every app should not have its own password and its own user management. And then you pick Keycloak to capture them all.
Excellent. So like a unified user experience, no matter what protocol that needs to be implemented under the hood, no matter what client you're using. Cool.
And the first customization, what people didn't usually do, they put their company logo on the login screen.
Yes, that's exactly right. So we have a ton of questions. Can we configure from based authentication and Keycloak using OpenID or some other authentication method required for setup?
So I'm trying to understand. So can we configure form-based authentication using OpenID? Well, form-based authentication would be I put in a username and password and press submit. That would be form-based for me. And then all the application can talk OpenID to Keycloak. But maybe this user is also asking about if they have OpenID somewhere already. Like if you can toggle a button in Keycloak and say I want to log in using GitHub or Google or Twitter, whatever OpenID Connect single sign-on you might be using for public-facing sites. So that's also possible. So you can have a button on the form-based login saying, I don't want to use the form, I want to use this button to log in using Google, for example. That's also possible.
Okay.
Might be half of a question, but maybe he will ask again.
And maybe we'll get into it too, just in our natural conversation. Hector is like maybe a Keycloak book directed specifically for developers is needed. Do you know if one already exists?
Yeah, the Keycloak book that we are about to raffle today. That's the first edition, but we will raffle the second edition. So if you look for Keycloak and Stian Torgersen on Amazon, you will find the book. It's published at Pact Publishing. So, and this is focused for developers, and that gets you started.
So those of you who missed the top of the show, we're going to give away a book today as part of this show. So at the end, we're going to ask a question about Keycloak, and whoever answers it correctly first will get a book from the publisher. So that's exciting. Does Keycloak allow for federated authorization, where there may be N+1 companies all needing to log in via the same portal with their own backing service?
Yes. That's the short answer is yes. So you can do, for example, then you have a login screen where you have like the button for GitHub, but maybe also another button saying I want to do federation with another company. That might then be OpenID Connect or OAuth, as you say there. It might be SAML. It might be LDAP, LDAP in a plain style. It might be LDAP in Microsoft Active Directory style. So that's all supported. You can configure that using the web UI. You can configure that using the REST API. You can also export the whole configuration in one staging environment and then import it in the production environment. So that's also one of these developer-friendly, ops-friendly things, I would say, that you can stage your changes from A to B to C.
Awesome.
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah, thank you, VixCodes. And finally, after this one, we'll take a break, not a break, but we'll actually get to business and rights and stuff and take a break from questions. But how big of a user scale have you tried Keycloak with?
So I know of systems that have millions of users. At the same time, you need to, well, what drives the load of a Keycloak system in the end? So it's the number of active users at a given time that have a session. And then also how many of those are logging in at the same time. Like the more people are logging in, like the more password hashing you need to do, the more CPU you're burning to make sure that all your passwords are securely hashed. And we actually have something since the end of last year. We have a proper sizing guide there, so that you can make a calculation of how many concurrent users are online, how many logins, how many token refreshes are they doing, and from there you can calculate how much memory, how much CPU you need to have there. And the
Brilliant.
good news is that Keycloak can scale both horizontally and vertically. So yeah, you have a choice there how you want to deploy it.
Awesome. Cool. So what would you like to teach us next about Keycloak?
Yeah, I think we covered what users can do. Well, maybe you said login flows. So login
Cool.
flows, it's that thing that happens. Well, an application says, okay, you want to access me, I redirect you to Keycloak first. And the login flows are the things that users see or define what the user will see. So it might be just the login form, but then you can configure, do you want to have a login form where you first ask for the username, and on the second form you ask then for the password, because you might want to use the username to determine, if you want to check if they're authenticated using SAML, something like this. So the login form configure like being 1-step, 2-step. If you want to, the login flow will define if you then ask for the second factor or not, or if that would be part of the login flow.
Okay, so first the user sees a login form, and you said it's customizable in terms of what they do with that login form first?
Yeah, the login form itself is customizable, but then it's customizable also if the user sees the login form at all, and what happens after the login form or as a second step. So you can first maybe check if the user is logged in using Kerberos already. Then they will not see a login form at all.
Okay.
You can say should they use, or you can check if the user confirmed your terms and conditions, and then you need to check that off. You can have some required actions. So the required actions would be every user that tries to log into that application needs to have a second factor enabled, and then we force the user to enroll for a second factor there. What other required actions are there? We might want to ensure that the user has confirmed their email address. So they registered with an email address, but before accessing this application, we want to make sure that this email is valid. So we send an email out to the user with a link. They need to confirm that this email is really working. So there's so many things. You might need them to update their address because the address is not filled out. So I think from somebody who wants to get data from the user or make sure it's up to date and secure, there are a lot of things you can enable. From a marketing point of view, from a marketing person's point of view, you might actually think the user will never get to the application because there are lots of things you can put between the user and the application.
So first they see that login form. Yeah.
Yeah, but the cool thing is the application doesn't need to take care of it. So if you're an application developer that wants to deliver some value to the user, I don't know, by booking a train or by, I don't know, doing some transfers, you don't need to care about all that stuff. When the user comes to your application, all this, I'd say, compliance stuff, it has been ticked off. It just, it's done. Yeah.
Form can be hidden altogether, where it's just done.
Yeah, or skipped when you're logging using Kerberos. Are you familiar with Kerberos or?
No. Chad, are you familiar with Kerberos? Is it Kavaros?
Kerberos with a K, yeah.
Okay.
And the thing is, well, it's mostly like if you're in an enterprise environment, and well, I think probably if I say every Windows user who's logging to their Windows enterprise machine in the morning has a Kerberos token already. And when they then go to Keycloak, and instead of the login screen, we just check the Kerberos token, exchange, know that the user is authenticated, and then hand an OpenID Connect token to all the applications that require one. I would say an OpenID Connect token is now more common than a Kerberos token. and simpler to handle. So that makes a lot of sense in enterprise environments.
Cool.
Kerberos is standard. It also works on Linux, and I, on my Linux machine, also log in with Kerberos when I want to access any company resources, which is cool.
Excellent. So is the login flow mostly all about this login form that's like wildly customizable, or is there more to it?
Yeah, it's like form would be one page in my mind, and then there are like multiple pages that follow this form in the end. So it's like you complete, but then that's login flow is then complete. Yeah, but it's not like one form, but lots of forms in the configurable order that are happening.
Cool. So the idea is just the point we're driving home as part of this login flow is that the sky is the limit. The world is your oyster. You can do anything and everything you want. Well, I mean, you don't really say that in tech. It depends, but mostly.
Yeah, but the good news is we make it work for whatever you need in your company. I think I'd say 99% of the stuff is already there, and you can actually write your own plugins for the login flow as well. So if you have something custom that you need, you write an extension for Keycloak and plug it in there. Okay, I said one more thing and you need to extend the bubble.
That's okay. Many plugins available, also write your own. Cool. So now, Keycloak from an admin perspective.
Yeah, from an admin perspective, you will get a web UI where you can explore all the functionality. So there's a realm. Yeah, you log in and then there's a realm that you usually called master, and this realm is from there. It's initially populated, and then you create maybe a realm for your company, maybe a realm for your staging environment.
I don't understand the word realm.
Realm, REALM. So that's
okay.
That's a maybe I'm not a native and not spelling it well, not pronouncing.
Realm is what I would say, but that's okay. Yeah.
All right. That's a realm then. All right.
Yeah.
And this realm is like some are using it to separate different environments. Some use it to separate different tenants. And then you can create one or more realms, and each realm will then handle its own specific set of users, its own specific set of clients, its own specific set of federation as you set it up. So it's like the first or the top level ordering of things you configure in Keycloak. That's a realm.
Okay. So when you first start an administrator, it's automatic. The top level realm is automatically populated.
Yeah, it's already populated. You can explore it with all the clients being set up there. There's initial admin user setup, and then you create a new one for your organization, and then configure federation and brokerage, something we talked about earlier, like that you can log in using GitHub or maybe using your LDAP or Kerberos. These are all the things that you then configure. You if you choose to have Keycloak managing the users in its own database, you can do that as well. So you then can connect it. But that's maybe installation. Let's do that in the next step. So you can create your own realm with users either stored in the realm or in your own database, stored in LDAP. You pick them from Kerberos. You synchronize the users. That's all possible. You configure clients. You need to pick up a little bit of knowledge as an admin when it comes to client setups. So there are clients that are some clients get a client secret because they're maybe using it server side only, so the client can authenticate to Keycloak to, for example, exchange a code. Some clients are maybe single-page web apps that run in the browser of the user, and when they run in the browser of the user, they don't have anything that they can keep confidential, right? Anybody can look in your own browser, use the developer console of your browser and look in there. So they're like the public clients you can configure as well. And then I think there are lots of checkboxes around. You need to be, I hope at least that we get them with some sane defaults once you decided between public and private. And then you need to register, like, this application is running on this URL, and for security reasons, you need to configure this. Well, you can make it in a test environment. You can make it like any URL, but that would not be secure. In the secure environment, you really put in the URL where this application is then redirecting from and to. So these are the basics that you would probably usually set up with a new client.
So as a new administrator, you use Realms. As an administrator, you use Realms as a way to control who can access what.
Yeah, that's right.
Who can access and configure what different websites and what different clients.
You can
Yeah. Short answer, yeah.
You can use it to separate maybe some organizations, some environments in realms. And once you're inside a realm, like that's my production realm for all my internal employees, for example. That would be an example of a realm. Then you would then go in this realm and say, okay, this is my Grafana, this is my timekeeping application, this is my, I don't know, what else do we have there? This is my wiki, this is my Confluence, my Jira. All these applications you would register as clients, and then you set up users. I would say in a similar way, you would either in the database of Keycloak say, okay, this is the email address of the user, and that's and maybe give them an initial password, and then we will send them an email that they can log in, or you connect it to an existing user directory like LDAP, or you enable you can register yourself button, and then it will also work.
So you might have a realm for production, or you might have a realm for, would you have a single realm for like all your observability tools, or would a realm be like for Grafana and one? Like,
No, it might, you might split several environments. For example, you could choose to have like one realm for internal users and one realm and for internal users and internal applications, and another realm for external users and external applications.
Okay.
On the other hand, you could also set up different Keycloaks for that. Might be even more secure.
Okay.
You could, if you have different stages, you might then set up a Keycloak instance for each stage.
Okay.
But you could also integrate it in one Keycloak. Where would I usually use stages, realms most of the time? Yeah, usually you have at least two that you say, like, this is the master realm where the admin logs in with some master credentials. And then you have a second realm where you have the real users in that are logging in.
Cool. We have Fuel Snobbles here. Hello, Fuel Snobble. Fuel Snobble says, hello. Is this IAM integrated with AWS IAM?
I've never seen it being integrated with AWS IAM. Yeah, that's the short answer.
I don't know. I haven't seen it. Yes.
Yeah.
Cool. And so now you want to talk about like an installation experience?
Yeah, an installation experience. As I said earlier, Keycloak has been around for 10 years now. And we were there before Kubernetes, I'd say. So,
yeah.
So you would, you can download a zip file and extract it if you want to. You install a Java virtual machine, You install Java, you extract a zip file and run a command line. That's one way to install it. And the other way is there's also a container that bundles everything. Sorry, excuse me.
So the first one was like just a binary.
Yeah, or an archive you extract. It's not a single binary, so it comes with
Okay.
lots of folders, some jars. It's a Java application inside. But we try. We are getting better and better with each release that you don't really that you don't notice too much that it's Java. So you have a single command line wrapper. You put all the you have command line options that like you would do with a single binary.
Okay.
So you download is it like 170 megabytes at the moment? You unzip the zip and install Java, and they're done. Or you use a container. It was also the same with the container. You download a container. You don't need to. If you need to have some kind of container runtime, being a Docker or Podman, and give it a start, that's also possible. And of course, well, we are on the CNCF project. Of course, you can also run it in Kubernetes, both as a container and choose your way to install it there. But there's also a Keycloak operator. The Keycloak operator, well, you need to install the Keycloak operator, and this then manages all the resources that you would need to run Keycloak. So there's and see what your writing is. Yeah, use the Keycloak operator. And for an operator is the usual Kubernetes procedure. You install a custom resource definition. You spin up a deployment with the operator, and then the operator will look at the custom resource definition, the custom resources you create according to that custom resource definition, and spins up the pods of Keycloak, configures the ingress if you want to make sure that Keycloak properly clusters when you set up a stateful set there. So that's all. That's, I think, the 3 ways to install it. Not sure if I missed one. Maybe I have to look at the homepage.
Cool. We have a question from B2. Can we connect PostgreSDB of apps directly with Keycloak for our authn purpose without having any dependency with Keycloak?
For authn. No, you wouldn't do that. So the only connection an application would have to Keycloak would be then using the OpenID Connect protocol for authentication. And for authorizations, we offer some REST endpoint and some examples how to authorize the users. But you would never access the Keycloak database directly. And we also don't offer any. You would rather want to keep that secure, put it this way. You could maybe, if maybe you have an application that already exists and you want to, if you would then think maybe synchronize roles or users permissions from Keycloak to an application, but as one step in the migration path, I think that might make sense. But in the long term, I would rather use the OpenID Connect protocol to maybe the user endpoint, user info endpoint to be very correct. That the application receives a token and uses this token to ask Keycloak, give me some information about this user. And this is the user info endpoint. And in this user info endpoint, you might then encode what roles this user has, maybe even the first name, last name to present on the UI. All this information might be then presented by the user info endpoint. And I say for a lot of applications, just providing some rows might just be enough to do authorization. For some not, and then they might look at things like Open Policy Agent or the authorization built into Keycloak. But for some applications, that's just enough.
Is the workflow of a user authenticating using Keycloak consistent enough that we can talk about it now, or that we can write it out on the board, or is it so wildly configurable that it doesn't make sense to go through that?
I think what happens in the browser is so wildly configurable. From a user, that login flow, that's so wildly configurable. That's I think it's difficult to write it down because it's very specific. But then there's this OpenID Connect flow, and this is very standard, and it's standardized, and we can try to write it down.
Okay, that sounds great. I think that'll help me understand this access management side of security. So an OpenID Connect flow. And is this specific to Keycloak, or is this going to be like a general, no matter what you're using?
That's general, no matter what. Yeah.
Okay. And
So,
okay.
So we have two actors, I would say, or two parties, I would say. So one is Keycloak, and the other one is the application.
Okay.
That the user wants to authenticate to. And usually you have like a swim lane diagram there. That's how they usually do that. One stream was like Keycloak. What's Keycloak doing over time, and what is then?
Okay, love it.
And this and maybe a third swim lane. The third party would be the user. Well, yeah, but let's draw. I explain. You draw. Let's not make it too technical.
Okay, no. Well, I can either do this as a series of steps, or I can make it into a diagram. But I trust your judgment on whether it's what the complexity level is. Whether.
Yeah. Okay. But then let's make three bubbles. One or
okay.
Make this two party, three parties. Make three bubbles. Okay. One being user, one being Keycloak, and one being application. And then I talk you through what's happening.
Is the app make some errors. Yeah. Okay. So we have a user, an application, and Keycloak.
Yeah.
Cool. Fun.
Maybe you can put the Keycloak, or you want to make some arrows shortly. So okay. The arrows will be. Let's see. Okay, the user wants to access the application. No, it's fine.
That's in between.
Yeah, maybe below in between. Okay. That's cool.
Yeah. I love it. Okay. Yeah, that's good. Application and Keycloak. Awesome.
Yeah. So we have this OpenID Connect login thing, and so the user open their browser and want to access the application. Either they use Google to find the URL, or maybe have a bookmark. So what they do is then they use their browser to serve to the application. So that would be our first arrow, going to the application. Okay. They send one request, using their browser. They send one HTTP request from the user, the user's browser to the application. It'd always be the browser, so that's fine. And then the application says, okay, I haven't seen you today. You're not logged in yet. So, but I know a great identity provider, that's Keycloak. So I redirect you to Keycloak. So the application will send a response back to the user. The response then contains the URL of Keycloak. And then the browser, so that's the response with a new URL, basically. And the URL is like a long URL saying, okay, this is where Keycloak is. And by the way, you started your journey here at this application. And I also have some value there, announced that when you return back, I will know when you started here. And like, this is all in this URL encoded.
Okay. Should I, new URL, I can capture some of that.
Maybe we can start putting numbers on it, but... Okay,
I like it. Okay.
So that's one. Two is then we're returning back to the URL.
User accesses app via browser.
Yeah. 2 is then application redirects browser to Keycloak.
2, application, redirects browser to Keycloak.
Yep.
Love it.
Okay, and then Keycloak starts the login flow. That's the big configurable thing we have there on the left. Keycloak can figure out, is the user already logged in because they logged in on that day already, the session is still active, or they ask for a password. All that is then happening.
Okay.
And the user stays in Keycloak as long as the login flow takes to complete. So if you are using, somebody was asking for brokerage so that you maybe be redirected to another SAML or OpenID Connect provider. We will not draw it here, but then this would be then redirect to even another site and then back to Keycloak. We might ask you to confirm the terms and conditions if they changed overnight. We might ask you to do this OTP stuff. Well, everything is done in the login flow in Keycloak. And once Keycloak is then saying, okay, now you're done, I know who you are, and I did all the stuff, then Keycloak redirects the user back to the application. But this will be also by sending a redirect a URL back to the browser of the user.
So Keycloak completes login flow and redirects user to where?
Back to the application.
Okay. So, but they're authenticated at this point.
Yes, they're authenticated, and this redirect URL. Well, it sends the URL to the browser. The browser sees, oh, I'm redirected to the application, and this long URL. It's again a long URL, and this contains then an authentication code. And also some one-time thing that the application has sent to, in the first redirect URL we had there. And then the application can then in the final step say, okay, oh, you're back. What took you so long? And then it sees that the code is there, and it also sees that this one-time thing that it sent in earlier is also there, so it's all safe. And it will then take the code and send it to Keycloak. So now there's a direct communication between the application and Keycloak.
Okay, I'm a little behind you.
All right, sorry.
So
Keycloak
completes the login flow and authenticates the user. And then what does it do?
It then redirects, it sends a redirect to the user's browser.
Okay. And it has a token?
With a code, it's called an access code, a code.
Okay.
Because it's not a token yet. It's going to be
okay.
So so this then is again going to from Keycloak to user, from user to application. And
so this is Keycloak to user, redirect, and user to application. Yeah. And this is step 5.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Okay, and so the application now knows that something arrived from Keycloak, but it does not know who the user is yet. So the user has authenticated, but the application doesn't know about the ID yet. So, and now then the final step, 6, where the application exchanges the code it received in the URL Also application exchange or calls Keycloak to exchange code against a token. To exchange code.
And receive an identity token.
It takes two things. It receives an access token and an identity token.
Okay. So it says here, now I know who you are, and the access token, I know what you're allowed to access.
Identity token, yes, I know who you are, and it's very configurable what we can put in this token. So that it could contain the user, an email address, the username, all the stuff the application usually wants to know about the user. It can be configured by user. And this access token, yeah, there are different ways to use it. So you could use it, well, usually you use it to access other services. So you, for example, if you have a second application and you want to talk to that application and want to say, yes, I'm doing this on behalf of this user, then you send this access code with it, and then it's like a and you receive a second. I forgot one thing: the access code and the refresh. You receive a access token and an identity token and a refresh token.
So three things.
Yeah, three things. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So this access token, you send it around, and you also use it to access Keycloak. That this is the user. This user is currently logged in, and it's usually short-lived. So it's like valid for 30 seconds, maybe 60 seconds or 2 minutes, depending on how secure you want them to be. But the user is usually working longer. Yeah, this is 6. Yeah, that's fine. And then if now and then this access token will expire, and then you will use the refresh token to send the refresh token to Keycloak. In return, you will receive a new access token and refresh token.
So an access token used to access services. And then
Yeah.
we have identity token. And then identity token is used to do what?
This is standardized that it will include, it will describe the identity of a user. It's you can freely, it will describe who the user is, basically, and you are free to share it with others. It's not secret in that way, because another service should not base any permission checking based on an identity token. The only thing you need to keep private and secure would be, the access token is, you want to keep it secure, but it's short-lived, but you can give it to others to prove what you're allowed to do. But what you should definitely keep secure and never should give away, except for Keycloak, would be the refresh token. That the application should never give away, that one.
Okay, so we have identity token, and then we have a refresh token.
Yeah, that's right.
And that allows the user to access the website within a certain period of time without going through the whole login process again.
Now the application, so a bit different. So the application has this access token received in step 6, And this is then only valid for like 30 seconds or 60 seconds.
Okay.
But then the application can then use a refresh token to get a new access token after, let's say 30 seconds. And whenever the application does that, it will know that the user, for example, did not log out in between. Maybe the application has its own session running there, so it continue and extends the session when the user is working on it. And there's then no need to redirect the user again back to Keycloak, which might then disturb the user experience and would also be probably inefficient from a performance point of view.
So access token is used to access services, but it's very short-lived, only like 30 seconds. Identity token describes the identity of user. And then the refresh token is used to get new access tokens without logging in again.
Yes, that's right.
Cool. That's great. Thank you. So where we are in our flow right now, the user accessed the app via the browser, and the application knows it needs a Keycloak. So it redirects that request to Keycloak. And so Keycloak starts this login flow that's very customizable. So it could be doing a lot of things here. But once the login flow is done, the user, Keycloak has authenticated the user. So it redirects the request to the user's browser. And now this like redirection URL has an access code associated with it. So it really redirects through the user to the application with this access code. So then the application calls Keycloak and says, hey, I have this access code. And Keycloak's like, great, here's an access token, here's an identity token, here's a refresh token. Yeah, and it gives that back to the application. To the app via the user's browser with an access code. Great. And so now the user has access to
that application. Yeah.
We got to put the final triumphant step on that.
Yeah, that's the goal then. Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe I can extend a bit more on this access token. So this access token, you can give it to other applications to show that this user to do things on behalf of the user. There, you can send it to Keycloak to figure out if the user is allowed to do one thing or another. And
sorry to interrupt. Should I maybe capture all this in this last little bit of space? Or would you like to use this for something else?
Maybe we use it for something else.
Okay, sounds good. You can, I'm sorry to interrupt it. Please feel free to go on about all the different uses for access token.
That's right. This access token, well, what was I about to say anyway?
I'm sorry.
No, and then for example, you can send it to Keycloak to do authorization. You can send it to OPA, Open Policy Agent, to do authorization. And usually when it comes to this standards, OpenID Connect, this access token is opaque, as I say. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly. Okay. So it's basically it's a string, and it's not defined in the standard what it actually is. But when it comes to Keycloak, well, the standard says that the identity token is a JWT, a JSON Web Token. So it's like you can look at the string and decode it, and it basically contains JSON in an encoded form. So you can look really into this identity token and decode it. Hopefully your the OpenID Connect library in your application framework does that for you. You don't have, hopefully, and should probably not do that on your own. But then this access token with Keycloak, it's also a JSON Web Token. So the thing is, with other services, you might have a token that whenever you want to figure out if it is still valid, if it belongs to the right user, you need to send it to the single sign-on service you installed in your system and figure out is it okay or not. With Keycloak, in lots of scenarios, it's okay to check the signature on the JSON Web Token of the access token directly. So whenever you have this access token being sent to you, you do a cryptographic verification, decode the JSON in there, and and you also know it's been created like 30 seconds ago, so you assume the user is still logged in and it's still secure and nobody did some fancy, crazy stuff with it. So then you just accept the token without calling a central service. This might not be sufficient for a bank. For a bank, you might still want to, maybe for some actions it might be okay to do it this way, but maybe before you transfer the money, you send the token to Keycloak again and figure out, is this really still valid in this very second before I actually act upon this token? So that you have a choice there.
That makes a lot of sense. That you would want to add that extra layer of security before like a financial transaction or exposing health data or something like that.
Yeah.
I have a couple of questions. So when you say an access token as a JSON Web Token, as a JWT, is that Keycloak specific or is that generally how it's done?
An access token is usual. It's not defined in the standard that it's a JWT, JSON Web Token.
Okay.
So it can be any string, and therefore it can be a JSON Web Token.
Okay.
But the identity token, this is definitely always a JSON Web Token.
Okay.
If I'm not
And
mistaken, I need to do the standard.
Will you help me understand with my new brain, like what this has to do with OpenID Connect? Like I understand it's an OpenID Connect flow, but does it mean like it adheres to certain OpenID Connect standards?
Yeah, the good news is, yes, it's a standard. And so as an if this application is a third-party application that you bought, downloaded from the internet, whatever, then you look at the manual or in the administration and see, does it support OpenID Connect? And then you would need to put in probably only the Keycloak URL and maybe 2 or 3 more parameters, and then you're done.
Okay.
And if you're an application developer, you would be using an application framework that supports OpenID Connect. And then you will also deploy with your application that you've customly written, maybe a configuration file that you put in there at runtime. And this also contains the Keycloak URL plus 2 to 3 other parameters. And then you're done. And yeah, so it will then hopefully just work.
So it's very easy to integrate with Keycloak.
Yeah.
If it
The
supports
unfortunate thing,
OIDC.
the caveats are then to figure out where to put this URL of Keycloak in the application. Sometimes it's the base URL, sometimes there's like which URL to put where. If it's a public or a private application there, if you have a client secret or not a client secret. First time, you might Google for a tutorial on YouTube. But once you've done the third one, you know where to click for.
Awesome. This is wonderful. Thank you. I think we have a question it's kind of old, but I'm just now seeing it. For setting up form-based user login authentication, which is the best way, OpenID or Kerberos? Now I got
Okay, form-based login. Yeah, form-based login is everything that has a login flow. Now I understand what he was saying there. So OpenID Connect. Well, what you can do with Kerberos, you can enable it that the login page of Keycloak just flashes shortly, loads in the browser, and then immediately continues without the user interacting at all. So that's the great level of automation that you can have with Kerberos.
Cool.
With OpenID Connect, and then you can have a fallback automatically and say, okay, I didn't recognize any Kerberos token. Do you want to now log in with username and password? With OpenID Connect, that might not be that simple. You can then, it's also possible, but then you would definitely redirect. Well, you can only check if the user is logged in with another OpenID Connect provider by redirecting to that other OpenID Connect provider. So once you do that, you wouldn't know that the user is not logged in by that provider, and then the login screen that's presented would be the one of that other login provider. So I'd say if you want to show as a fallback if the user is logged in using Kerberos, the standard Keycloak login form, then Kerberos is the way to go. And the unfortunate thing is that Kerberos usually requires some configuration on the client, on the PC of the user running the web browser. So it's probably only working in corporate environments. So if you're not in a corporate environment, then you might not be able to do Kerberos because people don't want to fiddle with their settings on their machines. And then the only choice you have left is OpenID Connect. Yeah, good question. Now I finally understand what the question was about, hopefully.
Hector has a three-part question that's coming in right now.
Okay.
So we'll give aha. Okay, here we go. Hector, thank you for this question. It's very thoughtful. So some time ago, I received an email asking if I considered Keycloak authorization services as a useful feature, if I remember well.
Okay.
I feel authorization services are underestimated. In my experience, they simplify development, abstracting authorization decisions by delegating them to Keycloak. Yeah. And then I'm afraid these services will be deprecated in future releases. What do you think about my opinion and fear?
Yeah, so, okay. First, adding some context. So there are some applications that just want to know if you're or they just want to know about some roles of a user. For example, are you a standard user or are you an admin user? Mm-hmm. And maybe this number of roles is like 2 or 3 roles, or maybe, that you need to know about. And then it might be fine to include those in an access token and do a simple evaluation in your application. And that's, I think, how a lot of applications, especially, I say, in enterprises start. But eventually you want to add more data to it. So maybe I'm allowed to access this one customer, but not another customer. Maybe I'm allowed to do this functionality and not another. So this soon it's getting, if you want to draw it on a board like this, you need one board, and then maybe a month later you need 2 boards to write all the rules on it. And that's the point where you, as an application developer, say, can I offload it to somebody else? Or maybe externalize it, or maybe have a better UI to configure those things, or different methods to test all these permissions, because at some point it becomes, it shouldn't become an art to configure security, but it becomes like a delicate job. You maybe want to run tests for your authorization rules, like who should be allowed to do what. And then this is the point where you want to externalize authorization, like in the way that Hector described here. You want to have a rule set that you want to write your application, you want to set up Keycloak, and then in a then in another place, either a third place or within Keycloak, you want to define all these rules, who's allowed to do what, based on the roles they have, and maybe the time of day and the weekday, and if they're logging in from Europe or the US, and all these kind of rules that come in. And maybe also the customer they're currently working on, all these things then usually put into a big blob of JSON maybe, and then sent to that authorization service, and the application say, you figured it out, and then it returns either allowed or not allowed. And yeah, so Hector is asking, so it's a good practice to externalize it. So the question is then, at the moment, it's a preview feature. So it's not, so we haven't yet said it's mature. And this is then saying, we're saying that the primary reason is that we might change it once, that we are still allowed to change it in order to make it work in a way, or well, once we say it's mature, we are not able to mature it anymore. To make it even maturer, let's see what the word for that is. So I think it's good to be used already, but it might change because we didn't put that green check mark on it. So you might experience that from one release to another, things might change, and looking in the future is always difficult. So are we eventually deprecating it or not? I'd say it's probably on the road of things that are maturing and getting better and will stay for. At the same time, we're also looking at things like OPA or other authorization services, SpiceDB, that are doing a great job there as well. And when you look on the internet, you will find examples how to combine these things with your applications. That you maybe define your users and your roles and groups in Keycloak, export them to OPA or to SpiceDB, and then let OPA or SpiceDB do the evaluation. Maybe at some point we will see extensions that also Keycloak talks to SpiceDB or OPA. I've seen some examples of that already, but that time will tell how that evolves over time. It's a developer-friendly thing. So you can develop your own extensions. You can also join the community in writing these kind of extensions. And Hector is asking the right questions here. So it's currently also the hot topic. Let's see. I don't have that magic glass bulb I can look into, but it's a crazy topic at the moment.
Thank you for your thoughtful question, Hector. And we have one from B2. How do you protect and unprotect API endpoints using cross-grained authorization in Keycloak?
So that would depend on the application framework you're using. So I assume that you're maybe an application developer either in Quarkus or in Spring Boot or another language, and you would, well, it then depends as usual, but sometimes you're putting an annotation to, well, it would be Java. You would be putting an annotation to an endpoint, a REST endpoint, and saying, okay, this user would need to have that role. For example, that's a simple way when you do role-based authorization. Sorry, I mixed them up. Cross-grained, was it coarse-grained? When it would be rows, then we would put annotations in there. If you would, as I said, when you do this more fine-grained authorization with context, then you would need to have the application collect maybe some data that you would send to Keycloak or send it to OPA or whatever place to actually make that decision, right? So it's usually a best practice that, well, Keycloak should not call out to your Well, I think the best practice is that the application collects all the data it needs and sends it all the context information that's needed for the decision to whatever endpoint, and then the endpoint should make the decision stateless. Otherwise, yes, you can do it, but it can get messy quite fast, and then you have maybe delays that are slow, and you need to figure out where the error happens. If you really send this self-contained data, blob, I'd say, over, it's usually simpler to debug it, also from an application point of view.
Excellent. So what, Alex, would you like to do with this last little bit of space?
This last little bit, right? I saved that one. Let's have a look at my page here. What did I put in here?
Or, yeah.
I think we covered some. Yeah, see? Maybe I should look at the release notes, what we did last.
The future.
Or
the recent past. Yeah, of the 10-year history.
So I was involved in Keycloak benchmark. So that's like a sub-project of Keycloak. And we did a lot of benchmarking, performance testing with Keycloak on Kubernetes. And if you're interested to figure out, if you go on the Keycloak page to figure out how to size Keycloak, you will find this information there already. But then it's also interesting if you deploy Keycloak in your own environment, you have set it all up, and now you want to figure out, is your environment comparable? How many logins per second can I do? How much memory do I need? I would ask you to go to the Keycloak benchmark project. It's a community-driven sub-project of Keycloak, where you would be finding tools to generate lots of dummy users for load tests. You will find Gatling with load drivers to generate load of creating like lots of concurrent logins, lots of other concurrent activities you want to do. We also have there examples how you set up Keycloak to publish metrics. So the metrics are available, for example, in Grafana, that you can see how many sessions are currently active in Keycloak. How is my memory doing? Am I running out of memory or CPU?
Will you summarize the first few things that you can use the Keycloak benchmark project to do?
Oh yeah, so the three things would be generate data for a load test. So that would be, you need like hundreds and thousands of users, for example, and clients set up all this generate data for, that's the first thing you do. Then the second thing would be a load driver, so that you create concurrent logins. You can choose if the users log out or not log out. If they don't log out, you have sessions and more sessions and more sessions over time, and you will then find where your system maybe has a limit. And the third part is that
Listing.
Yeah, the third part is then how to use the metrics, how to get information for the system under test. Yeah. So yeah,
Cool.
it comes with setup, so you can set it up on AWS with OpenShift on AWS. It also comes with scripts to set up on a Minikube, so you have a choice
Cool.
there. And also we try to summarize some of the best practices that we found over time there. And like this is kind of the incubation of some of the content has then moved over to the Keycloak main web page as part of the high availability guides of Keycloak, where we summarize how to do multi-data center deployment, or multi-site as we call them. Yeah, that kind of things. So that was a good place. Good that we kept that space for the Keycloak benchmark project.
Yeah, I love it, and that's an important feature, I think. Findle's here. Hi, Findle. Thanks for being here, friends. I do. If you want to, I can fit like one fact in here, or one. I can make a little room if there's anything else you feel it's important to impart. Anyone in the audience, if you have any questions, now is the time to ask those questions. Also, soon we're going to do our book giveaway, so we're going to ask you a question, and if you are the first one to get it right, you will receive a Keycloak book. And is there anything else, Alex, that you would like to add to the board?
Yeah, maybe the one last thing here out to the board. But that if you want to reach out to me, you might want to reach out to me in the Slack and Slack of the CNCF. That would be a good place to meet me for a chat.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where you would usually find me. Now and then you would see an email from on the mailing list of Keycloak. I think that's the most classic way. I might then answer there or not. But let's say for today, find me on the CNCF Slack. Either send me a direct message, or there's also like the Keycloak channel and the Keycloak developer channel. Yeah.
And for the winner of the book today, they'll contact you in the CNCF Slack workspace, and you'll give them a link to get the book.
Yeah, that's right. So, I probably need to get I agree with the publisher that I give them the address, the publisher. So the winner will need to give me their address. I forward to the publisher, and they will send out it by regular mail.
Excellent.
How offline is that?
And we have a question: is the first edition Keycloak book, is it still relevant, or is it important to get the latest edition?
I think the first edition was still covering the Wildfly edition of Keycloak. It was very different to configure. And the second edition now covers the Quarkus distribution of Keycloak. So I think there's a lot of updated content in there. So if you are moving just now from the Wildfly edition to the Quarkus edition, then it might be a good read. If you're totally new to Keycloak, it's also a very good read, but then probably pick up the second edition, because then this is also the current distribution. We don't distribute the Wildfly edition anymore. Yeah, that's why I would say get the second edition. It doesn't have so much. Well, it has some updated content. For example, recently when Keycloak started 10 years ago, back in the time we created our own clients. So all the application frameworks did not have OpenID Connect built into them. So we needed to provide the integration with, for example, Tomcat, with Jetty, with Spring Boot, and all the others. By now, these application frameworks have their own integration with OpenID Connect, and we do no longer provide this integration from the Keycloak project, but rely on the provided functionality in the other frameworks. And for example, the new book has an explanation how to connect. I think it's Spring Boot with Keycloak. It's Spring Security as part of Spring Boot connected to Keycloak.
We have that segues nicely into another thoughtful question from Hector. Hector says, Spring Framework has been developing native authentication and authorization modules. Does it make sense to continue using Keycloak instead of native Spring authentication and authorization services?
I haven't been doing so much Spring lately. I think it still makes sense to use Keycloak for its whole identity and access management that is shown here. It's so much functionality that you don't want to have in your application, and I think Keycloak is doing that very, very well. If you're you should stop using Spring, the Keycloak adapter for Spring, because I think it was only built for Spring 2 and it's now Spring 3 is around. So you should definitely use Spring Security. But if you are then using OpenID Connect in a reasonably live environment, or let's say, real-world scenario, I think that's what we call them, then you will find all the features that we bring as Keycloak to the table quite useful.
Excellent. Thanks for the thoughtful question and the thoughtful answer. I'm going to do a recap of all of this before we do our big book giveaway. And actually, I want to promote a small thing of my own. I host another show called You Choose that's on the DevOps Toolkit YouTube channel. And in that show, we're doing a choose your own adventure through the whole CNCF landscape. So we're on chapter 3, security right now. And so we're going through, when I say we, I mean me and my co-host, Victor Farsick. So in each episode, we present all of the CNCF technologies that do a certain thing. So we do have an identity, an access management episode coming up. Mm-hmm. And then for each system design choice, we'll invite someone on from each project to each give a 5-minute presentation. So just an overview of what the project does and their main benefits. And then after those presentations are done, we'll do some question and answer. And then we put it to the community to vote on which one they want to see us implement in an ongoing demo. So it's not a winner. It's not the win-lose situation. It's just like what you want to learn more about. So Alex, I'll ping you. I'll talk to you about this afterward, but I hope that you'll be a guest and represent Keycloak for the access management episode coming up in a couple weeks.
Sounds a cool episode. So happy to join it as a guest or even as presenting. So it's great to hear about the landscape.
Yeah, great. I hope you can. Yeah, it's a super fun show. And we just did, let's see, we just did like access policy, admission controller policies last week. And then next week, on Tuesday, we'll do runtime policies. But let's get to the issue at hand. Let's talk about Keycloak. I'm going to recap everything you just told me, and feel free to interrupt me if I have something wrong or if you want to add more information. And also, folks of you in chat, this is your last chance to ask questions. So, way back before Keycloak existed, 10 years ago, Keycloak is ancient as far as cloud native techs go. The problems that existed was that every application needed its own unique username and password. So that's no fun as a user. You have to try to remember all the different, what was my login for that one? I forget. Forget it. I just won't even use that app anymore. But also even as someone who's creating the app, you have to create login forms and create register forms for every single application that you make. So that's a pain in the butt. And then also there are many different access protocols that were being used for different applications. And the OIDC, the OpenID Connect standard was just new. And we never said this explicitly, but OIDC is a standardization for a process for authenticating, I guess, users to applications. Is that correct?
That's the main use today, but there are like more aspects to that. But yeah, that's I think one of the main uses.
Yeah. So we have a standardization that is prevalent today that was just starting to exist back then. So we talked about what is IAM generally. IAM is identity access management. So identity access is going to cover a lot of different things, like the first time a user ever comes to a site, and then later when they come back, how they authenticate, what happens when they lose their password, if you integrate multi-factor authentication. So that's all like user side views, but then there's also admin view of what IAM can do. So with the IAM, you can assign roles. You can manage both the users and the clients of your system, and you can enable fine-grained authorization, and you can define your login flows. So that's all different aspects of identity management solutions generally, and surprisingly, they're all different things that Keycloak can also do. So the only thing in there is the fine-grained authorization part is a preview feature right now, and Keycloak is using OPA for that, which is
No.
Well, Open Policy Agent.
No. Well, we have something built in without need to use OPA. But if you go for the community and see what other people are doing, sometimes people say they want to do it differently or something in addition. then
Okay.
then people or in a community are connecting, for example, OPA. So we
Okay.
have
Oh,
something
that's great.
authorization built in. Yeah, you don't need to do that. Yeah.
Excellent. But it is a preview feature.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So Keycloak is the open source identity and access management solution. We went bold and used the word the there. So then, so what's it like when a user logs in? The login flow is wildly customizable. So I started trying to capture it here, but then it was so like there's so many bajillion things you could do, it became difficult. So you could have one login form, you can have many login forms, you can hide your login forms altogether. You can customize your login form by adding things like two-factor authentication or making them confirm their email address or checking to see when was the last time they logged in. If it's been X amount of time, then we need them to confirm this particular piece of personal information before they can log into the system. There's tons of stuff you can do there. Or you could hide the form altogether, like if they have logged into the system very recently and there's a recent OpenID Connect related token that can be used. For all these different ways you can customize your login form, the Keycloak community, it seems to be like a vast and wonderful place. Like there's probably a plugin already written for whatever you want to do for your particular login form. But if there's not, you're welcome to write your own plugin, and maybe you can share that with the community too. So then when you, an administrator experience, as an administrator, you use a Keycloak UI, and then the Keycloak UI can be divided into realms. So there's the initial admin realm, but then you can create your own realms to be able to separate concerns. So you could have your users, they could be stored in one of these realms, or they can be stored in a database. You configure your clients as part of a realm. You can register applications as part of a realm. So you might have a realm that's related to production, and you might have another realm that's related to internal users and applications. But some people also will just use a whole different instance of Keycloak to separate these concerns as opposed to doing it in realms. And then if you want to install Keycloak, there are lots of different ways to do that. There are 3 different ways, actually. You can download and install an archive file directory, or you can download and install Keycloak and run it as containers. Or if you're using a Kubernetes-specific installation, you can use the Keycloak Kubernetes operator, which will manage the lifecycle of your Keycloak application, which will help with that. Then we talked about the OpenID Connect flow. So we're going through all of this stuff, but your user experience of integrating an application that supports OIDC using Keycloak, it should be a pretty easy experience. So it just works, I believe you said, yes. So we're talking about how it works, but when you actually do it, part of the joy of it is that you don't need to know every little bit of this. But we're going to tell a story. There was once a user who wanted to access an application via their browser. The browser redirects that request to Keycloak. And so then Keycloak starts this highly customizable login flow. And so once this flow is completed, we're not going to say too much about it because it could be anything or nothing. Then Keycloak, then the user is authenticated, and Keycloak will redirect the request to the application via the user's browser. And this time the request has an access code associated with it. Now the OIDC compatible application will take this access code and call Keycloak with it. And that will cause Keycloak to then give the application an access token, an identity token, and a refresh token. So let's press pause on that and let's talk about what these 3 tokens are. So that access token is usually used to access services, and that's what's happening in this case. It's going to be the thing that allows access to the application. The identity token describes the identity of the user, and then there's a refresh token, because the access token, it might last for a very short time, like only 30 seconds. So the refresh token is used to get new access tokens without having to go through the whole login process again. Okay, so back to our story. Our application has gotten these 3 tokens, and then is our big happy ending that our user can now access the application. And so that's the user experience side. And then, as we just said, the developer experience side should be like, poof, it just works. And then the last thing we talked about, besides how to find Alex if you have questions later, which is in the CNCF Slack, we talked about the Keycloak benchmark project, which is a super cool thing. So with the Keycloak benchmark project, you can generate data for load testing. And then you can load to the driver. So you can create lots of concurrent logins. You can make it so people don't log out. You can add a lot of load to your system. And then you collect metrics. And so there are best practices around how to use those metrics and then how to set up this benchmark process in your own system. And is there anything you'd like to add or that clarify?
No, that's a great recap. Thanks for doing all that.
Oh yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you. It's such a joy. We have some chatter. I'm going to say hello to folks in the chat. Code with Sean, you were the first to say hello, and now you're still here with us. It's wonderful. OAuth is for authorization, and OIDC is for authentication. I think that's great to point out. Mm-hmm. OAuth 2 is the standardization the most popular authorization standardization, according to what I just learned a couple weeks ago on the show. And we have LinkedIn user says, have thanks both, learned a lot. Thank you for saying. And on access token, it may be the last days for access tokens. Is that what you're saying? Just depends on how it's configured. Do you have a comment about that, Alex?
An access token may last 4 days.
Oh, got it.
Maybe.
I see. Okay,
you can make it last as long as you want, but as a security practice, they're usually short-lived. That's the recommendation. You can configure it differently. It might be sufficient to make them last 4 days in your environment, but let's see.
Excellent. So yes. I'm not going to ask that question. So I think we're done here and we're ready to give a book away. Is that true?
Yeah, it's true, right? So
this is so exciting.
So let's, as we said, the first one who gives the correct question, the correct answer in the chat will get the book, and you will need to provide your post address to me or your office address to me so I can send it to you. So here's the question. The question is, how old is Keycloak? I think we said it multiple times during this talk, but type it in, send it in here, and we will get that book shipped to you.
Excellent. This is so much fun. Maybe I'll even write it on the board.
All right.
Well, we got it. This is so exciting.
Hey, congratulations to the winner.
So Epic Tralala is our winner. Good to see you here, Epic Tralala. And that's great. We have 3 people got in quickly, and we even got Alexa even got the month of how long. So I appreciate that. But our first one was Epic Tralala. So that is the best way to get in touch with you in the CNCF Slack to get their
that would be the best. Yeah, I think it's a Twitch platform. Yeah, let's connect to me to using the CNCF Slack. That would be great.
Excellent. Well, what fun. What a joy. Okay, thanks for pioneering the new giveaway part of the Enlightning show. As a goodbye, I'm going to replay the music, and we'll wave and dance. Feel free to dance a little up there, Alex. But we're going to say goodbye. Thank you so much, that one. Everyone. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Thanks for chat. Thanks, everyone, for asking your questions. Thanks, Alex.
Great show.
Sharing your time and expertise. Bye.